It was one of those quiet nights where the only sound is the faint hum of the fridge. No TV, no music, just me, a couch, and the weight of a long day pressing down on my shoulders. I was scrolling aimlessly on my phone, half thinking about going to bed early, when it buzzed, a new message from my cousin. At first, I thought it was just another one of those late-night memes he's known for sending. But when I opened it, it wasn't a picture. It was an audio file. The room felt even quieter as I stared at it. The only light came from my phone screen, casting that cold, bluish glow over my hands. I tilted my head a little, squinting at the timestamp. It had been sent less than a minute ago. Why would my cousin send me an audio file? I muttered under my breath, thumb hovering over the play button. Probably some dumb inside joke, I thought. Maybe something we'd laugh about tomorrow. Still, there was something about the way he sent it. No context, no emojis, just the file, and that tiny little delivered checkmark sitting under it like it was holding a secret. I sat back against the couch, my free hand rubbing my temple. Me and my dad. We hadn't talked much lately. Nothing dramatic, just a growing silence between us. And if I'm honest, I'd been avoiding thinking about why. But that night, I had no idea that this little audio file was about to rip open something I wasn't ready to face, and that once I hit play, there'd be no going back. The audio clicked on. For a moment, I just heard the familiar background chatter of my family. Voices overlapping, the faint clink of dishes. I could almost picture the scene. It felt weirdly comforting, like I was eavesdropping on a Sunday afternoon I wasn't invited to, and then I heard my dad's voice. Warm, recognizable. It had been days since I'd heard it. And for some reason it made me sit up straighter. He was laughing at something. I couldn't make out the first part. But then, clear as day, I heard him say it. He's just a hopeless loser. It took me a second to process it. Like my brain refused to attach those words to that voice. My dad's voice. I froze. My thumb lingered over the pause button, but I couldn't press it. The laughter in the background kept going. He kept talking. It wasn't a joke. It wasn't playful. It was casual, as if this was just a normal, accepted truth. The air around me suddenly felt thick, like it was pressing in from all sides. My fingertips went cold. I could hear my own heartbeat. In my ears, that's not my dad. At least not the dad I thought I knew. The room felt smaller, darker. Even though nothing had changed except the sound coming through my phone, and for a split second, I wondered if this was even real. Maybe I misheard. Him. Maybe it was about someone else, but no. He said my name first. I let the recording run, but I wasn't really listening anymore. I just sat there, staring at nothing, feeling something inside me splinter. I closed my eyes for a moment, trying to push away the sound of his voice from that recording, but instead, my mind pulled me somewhere else. Years back, I'm standing at the edge of a quiet lake. A fishing pole clutched in my small hands. The water is still, except for the occasional ripple from the line. My dad is beside me, wearing that faded baseball cap he always wore, the one with a frayed edge on the brim. He's crouched down, showing me how to hook the bait, smiling like we've got all the time in the world. I can still feel the warmth of the sun on my neck, the smell of the lake water, the faint sound of his laugh when I got too impatient and reeled in too early. He didn't call me a loser then. He called me champ. Another memory surfaces. Soccer game, Saturday morning. I'm 10 years old. Sprinting down the field, the grass damp from early rain. From the sidelines, hear him yelling my name, clapping, cheering like I'm the only kid out there. When the whistle blows, I run to him, breathless, grinning. He pats my shoulder and says, "That's my kid." I remember how big that felt to be his kid. But now, sitting here years later, those memories feel different. He was proud of me when I was winning, when I was easy to brag about. But what about now? What about when I'm struggling? Was it all real, or just the version of me he could brag about? Open my eyes, and the warmth is gone, replaced by the cold light of my phone screen. Those moments used to be my proof that we were solid, that he believed in me now. They just feel like snapshots from someone else's life that night. Sleep wasn't even an option. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, the dark feeling heavier than usual. The audio kept playing in my head like a loop I couldn't shut off. His voice. Those words, every time I thought I was done replaying it, it started again. I turned on my side, checked my phone. It was 1:47 a.m. I scrolled. I tapped through random apps. Duh. But my thumb kept drifting back to that file. I told myself I wouldn't. Play it again. I played it again. It was like I was trying to find a loophole in his tone, something that could make it a joke. A misunderstanding, anything that would make it less real. But no matter how I sliced it, it was the same clear, deliberate, casual. Anger started mixing in with the sadness. I thought about the last time we talked, how normal it had seemed, how... He asked me about work. I told him I was figuring things out. He nodded like he understood. Now I wondered if he'd already decided I was a failure back then, just waiting to say it to someone else. How many times has he said this when I wasn't around? My chest felt tight. I rolled onto my back, staring at the red glow of my alarm clock as it clicked over to 2:03 a.m. The silence in the room was deafening, broken only by the faint ticking of the clock in the kitchen. Somewhere in the building, a pipe groaned, and I flinched, jumpy from too much thinking and too little sleep. I gripped my phone tighter, the cold metal edges digging into my palm. I wanted to call him right then, wake him up, demand an explanation, but I knew. That conversation wasn't something I could have half asleep and fueled by rage. So I just lay there, wide awake, knowing the morning would feel even heavier. By morning, my head felt like it was full of smoke. My eyes burned from lack of sleep, and my phone felt heavier than it should as I stared at it, debating. Finally, I tapped on my cousin's name and hit call. He picked up after a few rings. Hey, you listened to it, right? No small talk? No good morning? Just straight to it. I took a breath. Yeah. I listened. There was this awkward pause, like he was deciding how much to tell me. I could hear him moving around on the other end, maybe pacing, maybe trying to find the right words. It wasn't just some random comment. He finally said he'd been talking like that for a while before I started recording. I only hit record because I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My stomach tightened. What do you mean, talking like that? I asked, even though I already knew I wouldn't like the answer. He sighed. He went on this whole rant about how you've wasted your life, how you're not living up to anything, how you're a disappointment. And the word landed hard. Disappointment, somehow. Worse than loser. At least loser felt like an insult thrown in the heat of the moment. But disappointment. That's a conclusion. That's a verdict. I stopped pacing for a second, staring at the floor. So, you really meant it? I said quietly, more to myself than to him. I'm sorry, man, my cousin said. I didn't want you to hear it like this, but I thought you deserved to know. I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. Part of me wished he'd kept it to himself. The other part knew. Ignorance wouldn't have changed the truth. I sat at my desk that afternoon, my phone in front of me like it was daring me to do something. The sunlight from the window was too bright, making everything in the room look sharp, almost hostile. I opened my messages and clicked on my dad's name. The blinking cursor stared back at me. My thumb started moving before I could think. I heard what you said. You're unbelievable. Pause. Delete. New attempt. Why would you call me that? What did I do to you? Pause. Delete. Every version I typed came out too angry, too raw. I could practically hear his voice in my head, calm, dismissive, saying I was overreacting. And the worst part? If I exploded, I'd just be proving his point, proving I was too sensitive, too emotional, too much. So I just sat there, typing and erasing, my thoughts swinging between burn it all down and try to understand, but understanding. Felt impossible right now. The cursor blinked again. It's like it was mocking me. I set the phone down, then picked it back up immediately. I scrolled through old messages between us, little check-ins, jokes, reminders about family dinners, reading. Them now felt like reading someone else's history, someone who thought their dad respected them. My chest ached with the effort of holding it all in. I wanted to hit send on something just to make him feel it, but instead I locked my phone, shoved it in the desk drawer, and leaned back in my chair. The truth was, I didn't know if I wanted a fight or an answer. I told him I wanted to talk, and he suggested we meet at his place. So here I was, sitting at his kitchen table, a table I'd eaten at 1,000 times before. But it felt different now. The air was heavy. To coffee, mugs sat between us, steam curling up and disappearing before it reached the ceiling. We didn't start right away. He stirred his coffee. Even though he didn't put sugar in it, I tapped my fingers against the mug just to have something to do with my hands. The silence was thick enough to choke on. Finally, I broke it. I heard what you said. His stirring stopped. He looked up, frowning slightly. What do you mean? I held his gaze. About me. What you said to the family. That I'm a hopeless loser. There was a flicker, the tiniest flash in his eyes, before he leaned back. You're taking that out of context, he said, his tone already defensive. It was just a figure of speech. You know I don't mean that. I didn't flinch. Then what do you mean, Dad? Because I've replayed it 12 times, and it sounded pretty deliberate. His jaw tightened. He took a sip of coffee, buying time. I was frustrated, he said. You've made choices I don't agree with, and sometimes, I don't mean, could feel my pulse in my neck. Part of me wanted to raise my voice, to match his deflection with fire. But instead, I stayed steady. Say it to my face, Dad. If that's really how you feel, say it here now. He looked away, eyes drifting to the window. The steam from his coffee had stopped rising. Mine had gone cold. He let out a long breath, like he'd been holding it in the entire time. Look, he started, rubbing his forehead with the palm of his hand. I was just frustrated. I didn't mean it like that. I leaned back slightly, studying him. His voice was calmer now, but it had that rehearsed quality, the kind of tone you use when you're trying to put a lid on something. It's not really open it up. You've got to understand, he continued, I just want the best for you. I see you struggling. Maybe I don't know how to say it the right way. I almost laughed, but not because it was funny, because this was the dance we'd always done. Him saying something that cut deep, then wrapping it in, I'm just trying to help. I watched his fingers press against his temple, his eyes fixed on the table, and that's when it clicked. This wasn't about me failing. It was about me not living the life he imagined for me, the version of me that made him look successful. As a father, the version he could talk about at barbecues, smiling proudly while everyone nodded in approval. This isn't about me, I thought. It's about the version of me he wishes I was. And weirdly, that realization didn't make the words hurt less. It made them sting differently. Like suddenly I could see the wires behind the puppet show, the insecurities that made him lash out, the way his disappointment was rooted in his own reflection. I let him keep talking, his words blurring into the hum of the fridge in the background. For once I wasn't trying to defend myself. I was just watching when the conversation finally fizzled out. There was no big breakthrough, no cinematic hug, no tearful I'm sorry that would magically fix everything. Just 2 mugs of cold coffee and the hum of the fridge filling the space between us. I stood up, thanked him for the coffee out of habit, and walked toward the door. The night air hit me the second I stepped outside, crisp, cool, and strangely grounding. It felt cleaner than the air inside had. The street was quiet, just the faint hum of distant traffic and the glow of a streetlight flickering at the corner. I slipped my hands into my jacket pockets and started walking. The sound of my own footsteps oddly comforting. I didn't feel angry anymore. I didn't even feel the urge to text him later to say one more thing. I just felt done, not in the dramatic, slammed a door kind of way. More like putting down a heavy bag you've been carrying for way too long. I can't change how he sees me, thought, but I can change how much it matters. It wasn't about punishing him. It wasn't about cutting him out forever. It was about stepping back far enough to protect myself from that voice, the one that sounded like my dad, but spoke like a critic. As I turned the corner toward my own street, I realized my shoulders felt lighter, like maybe I didn't have to prove anything to him anymore, like maybe I never did. The next morning, I woke up without that, not in my chest, no. Replaying the words, no imaginary arguments in my head, just sunlight spilling through the blinds and the faint sound of the coffee maker sputtering to life. I poured myself a cup, sat at the kitchen table, and let the steam curl up toward my face. 4. The first time in days, the silence didn't feel heavy. It felt peaceful. I thought about the recording. I thought about my dad's voice, and I realized something. Those words didn't belong to me. They were his, shaped by his frustrations, his expectations, his version of the world. My worth was never his. To define, it isn't anyone's. I took a sip, feeling the warmth spread through my chest, and allowed myself a small smile. I'm not the loser he thinks I am, and I never was. The coffee tasted better than it had in a long time.